Money and medium of exchange are synonymous expressions. They are intangible ideas or concepts. Money has never been used as a medium of exchange, and a medium of exchange has never been used as money. Just reverse it, and you begin to see it a little more clearly. And we're dealing with what? Economic Myths and the Science of Deceit, Part 6. We're up to principle number 8 of monetary science, developed by Peter Cook and reiterated by Mr. Thorne and Mr. Warner. They say at number 8, money need not be made of any precious material, end quote. Well, is that true or false? Well, if you're going to use something as money, then it's got to be made out of something. And in order to meet all of its requirements, it would have to be a precious material. But now, they don't use anything as money. See, their system is a credit system, but they just simply call it money. But a rose by any other name is still a rose. So credit, let's substitute what they're really talking about. I wish people would actually, come out with it, what they're talking about. Credit need not be made of any precious material. That is absolutely true, because credit is intangible, and you couldn't make it out of anything precious. But nevertheless, money need not be made of any precious material, and that is false, because money is used to pay debts, credit is used to defer the payment of debts, and whatever serves as money is precious, or must be precious, because of the inherent characteristics necessary for it to serve as money. One of those characteristics of which is high value to low size and weight. In other words, it's got to be portable. And in order to have high value to low weight and low size, you're dealing with a precious substance. Now, you may not think that gold and silver are very precious, and if you look at the dollars and cents so-called value that's put upon it in today's market, you would think you'd be right. But unfortunately, when people were conditioned by the promises of redemption long ago, bank credit watered down the value of gold and silver, even long after that promise to pay the money was deleted. Such creatures of habit are we, that the author's solution is to use nothing as money and still call it money. So their proposal is not a monetary solution, is it? God commands just weights and measures. You can find that in Deuteronomy 25:13 through 16, for example, and elsewhere in the Bible, in the book of Leviticus, and also in Proverbs and elsewhere. But it's impossible to have just weights and measures unless there's something being used as money that can be weighed or measured. The word credit comes from the Latin word credere, which means to believe. And belief cannot be weighed or measured. I suppose you can tally it, though. And this is one reason why it takes more credit to get goods and services that you need today than it cost a month, a year, or a decade ago. I think you know that. Now let's go to their maxim number 9, and we'll begin with today's message. Number 9. The only forms of money needed to fulfill its primary purpose are bank, checkbook, credit, currency, and coin. Now, when they say currency, they're talking about U.S. notes, dishonored U.S. notes at that. And when they talk about coin, they're not talking about gold and silver, because they've already told you that money does not have to be a precious substance. They're not interested in gold and silver any more than the Federal Reserve System is. Okay? What they're talking about is copper nickel tokens. Okay? Well, does that sound like a monetary system to you? Sounds more like the Federal Reserve System, doesn't it? And what does the Federal Reserve System operate with? Well, we'll go to Keeping Our Money Healthy, Federal Reserve Bank of New York, page 12, 1977. Quote, and you recall, the Federal Reserve System works only with credit. Period. That's it. Or we can go to the same Federal Reserve Bank of New York in a publication called I Bet You Thought, page 7. This is my 1980 edition. Quote, banks don't keep cash in checking accounts and don't transfer currency or coin when acting on a check's instructions. Gee, they don't? Why not? Well, they say checkbook balances are transferred between accounts as bookkeeping entries only. The system doesn't operate on money. It doesn't operate on cash. The system operates on 100% intangible credit. That's the system we have. And that's the system that Mr. Thorin, Mr. Warner, Mr. Steve Zarlenga, Bill Stills, Ellen Brown, the late Sheldon Emery, and on and on and on, Peter Cook, Mr. Pop, F.W. Maisel, Dr. Charles Norburn, the authors, there's just no limit, really, to the number of people who can come up with it. You see, populist, Marxist, and the Socialist Federal Reserve System all state with absolute certainty that money is credit. And United States note, so-called currency, is the most highly prized credit among populists. Add to this list tokens made of base metals, not measured in harmony with any system of weight measurement, thus the tiny 10-cent piece versus the larger 5-cent token. Abandon all hope of common sense, ye who enter in at these gates. Forsake biblical and natural law, biblical and secular history, and economic definitions of long standing. Credit systems are held together by engineers of allopathic economics who treat adverse symptoms by whatever means necessary to produce the desired results. They rely upon the same vocabulary of a two-tier system fashioned by white-collar criminals and taught in modern economics, which is why you go to jail if caught doing what bankers do. You know, when you consider the solutions that are offered by folks out there, and I'm pretty sure that they're well-intentioned people, but they seem to believe that we already have or still have a free enterprise system and that they're going to preserve it by doing the same thing that the Federal Reserve does. This is not a free enterprise system. It's their club, and you ain't in it. You know, welcome to the Matrix, brother. You know, it's a world of mind control freaks who create truth by bending fictions until they look just as good as... No. They bend them until they look even better than the truth. Well, let's go on to point number 10, where they say that the quantity of money needed for a healthy economy is simply enough money to supply the demand for whatever public services and private enterprise capabilities exist in the economy. Well, the God of creation used to do that. You know it? The God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob provided enough gold and silver to operate a free enterprise economic system predicated on lawful money and not predicated on government or bank-created credit. Just as he supplied sufficient air, food, water, and energy resources for all our needs, so long as we remain unencumbered by thieves and tyrants in our lawful economic pursuits. Unfortunately, the masses of mankind are forever being regulated by godmen of organized religion, business, and state, who make it virtually impossible for most people of the world to have a decent standard of living. This shortfall, however, is not caused by a stingy God who was too cheap to provide sufficient natural resources for the earth's inhabitants. Look around. All other forms of life, which follow his embedded instructions, we call it instinct, seem to have enough. Maybe if we followed the law, that embedded instruction that was written on our hearts in Hebrews 8 through 10, Jeremiah 31 through 34, that's the law of God written on our heart. Maybe if we did that, maybe we would all have enough. For thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. He hath established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is none else, says Isaiah chapter 45 and verse 18. Now the Apostle Paul summarized this idea in a letter to the church at Ephesus, saying, Unto him be glory in the church by Christ Jesus throughout all ages, world without end. Amen. Ephesians 3:21. And to the church at Philippi, My God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus. Philippians 4:19. Believest thou this? Well, some people don't, because that's the writings of the Apostle Paul. And it's too bad that you don't understand Paul. Most people don't. I'm not saying that I do, but Paul is far beyond all of the critics out there who seem to think that Paul was some sort of a false prophet. Maybe we'll get to that in a long series somewhere down the road. Anyway, what is this money that's needed for a healthy economy, the supply of which these populist authors and the current Federal Reserve System measure in dollars? Well, you identify what it is that's measured in dollars, that they think they're going to use as money, and that the Federal Reserve currently uses money. And I will give you 100 pounds of it absolutely free. Remember, money is used to pay debts. Credit is used to defer payment of debts. And these authors and Congress plan to defer the payment of debts owed by Uncle Sam forever. No one would ever license you or me to do such a thing, because it's unlawful. Therefore, we cannot lawfully delegate an unlawful power to a lawful government. But we can unlawfully delegate an unlawful power to an unlawful government of our own choosing, for which the natural effects of violating natural laws of God can be expected to produce some very unpleasant consequences. Number 11, all the money needed for a healthy economy must be made available continuously by the monetary authority. And if they don't, then what? Well, we've seen the results when a team of control freaks managing a credit system showered us with and then shut off the supply of credit. It's called a bank panic. You know, like the ones they organized in 1837, 1857, 1929, 2008. So we're supposed to give this power to a band of lawyers who legislate America's domestic and foreign policy on behalf of whom? Well, corporate interests and the Israeli lobby. Rest assured that if it's a war they want, then a healthy supply of credit is what they'll create to have one. As absolute supreme monetary authority, however, God never primed the gold and silver pump with contracts for debt, after which he pulled the rug from under a sea of debtors. These economic calamities are all fashioned by our own sinful hands. But the gold of Solomon's day, would you believe? It's still here, although certain bankers hold most of it in their vaults. As a result of the credit for money swap they suckered our ancestors into between 1913 and 1968. Number 12. The quality of money lies exclusively in its stability in relation to the value of goods and services. Well, that may be true of tangible substances used as money, like gold and silver, being compared with tangible goods and services. But again, these folks expect to use intangible money, which is credit. And they say that credit, or the quality of credit, lies exclusively in its stability in relation to the value of tangible goods and services. Wait just a minute. Classical economists used to praise the qualities of gold and silver, which made them the most prized, swappable, and sought-after elements on the planet, being successfully used as money for thousands of years until they were replaced by a banker's stock in trade, intangible credit. Well, why would we have fallen for that? Because credit better satisfies the instant gratification lifestyle to which we've all become accustomed. Hey, you know, the federal government has over a $16 trillion budget debt currently. That's $16 trillion that hasn't been paid yet. Okay? That's why it's a debt. A debt, by definition, is a sum of money due. Okay? That chicken is going to come home to roost. Believest thou this? Now, could this be the dialectical materialism that was spoken of by Karl Marx? We are a very materialistic society. At any rate, the authors want us to believe that quality is infused into dollars of nothing by a mystical relationship that somehow exists between nothing and the real world of tangible goods and services. But it was Voltaire who observed that all paper money reaches its ultimate value, zero. Well, I'm with that guy. And the Federal Reserve System is our most recent example.